on the issue of abortion?
Well, quite simply, I believe that abortion is wrong. I believe that as a civilized society, we take pride in protecting our weakest members of society. And to do that, to protect our weakest members of society, we must also protect the unborn child. Under my leadership, Congress has passed a ban on partial birth abortion, which is a completely barbaric practice. Well, let me tell you about what they do. Partial birth abortion is never necessary to protect the mother's life. What it does is it has the child birthed normally, except right before the child is able to take its first breath of air, doctors plunge a scalpel into the back of the baby's head and suck the brains out. That's barbaric. And thanks to the leadership in Congress, we've been able to stop that barbaric practice. I believe it's a positive step toward reducing the number of abortions in America. I believe that teenagers should have to inform their parents about whether or not they're getting abortions. And most importantly, I do not believe that federal funds should be used to support abortions in this nation.
I'm a Catholic, a very devout Catholic. I was an altar boy. I was very active in the church. I believe firmly in the church doctrine that abortion is wrong. But that does not give me the right to legislate my views over someone who may be a Quaker or a Presbyterian or someone who doesn't even believe in God altogether. My position is a woman must have the right to choose. It's not anyone else's right to make that decision for her.
We're going to start with you, Mr. Perry, right here. Could you please tell us your stance on the issue of gay rights and gay marriage?
I'm a devout Catholic, once again. And church doctrine does not agree with gay marriage. However, there are many people who are not Catholic and who do not share those views. I believe that the states, as they have traditionally dictated the marriage laws, should do so again. They should dictate the marriage laws, and they should decide whether they would like gay marriage to be illegal.
There's one problem. I continue to support Senator Kerry. I agree with him. States should decide what happens with gay marriage. But there's the thing, they don't. Massachusetts, the voters did not decide whether or not they wanted gay marriage. It was the courts. If the people decide that they want gay marriage, or they don't, then that's fine. But not activist judges sitting on a court dictating their out-of-touch will to the American people. That's what I'm against. I'm against gay marriage. I support civil unions, but I do not think that I think that the institution of marriage should be reserved for a place between one man and one woman. I support the Defense of Marriage Act, passed in 1996 by overwhelming majorities in both the House and Senate, and signed into law by President Clinton. The main crux of that is defining marriage as between man and woman, and that's what I support.
President Bush, we're going to start with you here as well. Would you tell the audience what you would do to improve public education?
Well, that's a very good question. We've already started to improve public education. In the beginning of my term, we passed the No Child Left Behind Act, which increased the federal funding for schools and also gave parents the opportunity to pull their students out of failing schools. Thanks to No Child Left Behind, more than $7,000 is spent per pupil by the state, federal, and local governments. $7,000. Our funding for education programs has increased. Schools are now funded at $23.7 billion. It's up 60% from the Clinton administration. And funding for school vouchers, the most important part of the No Child Left Behind Act, is at $11.7 billion. Using these tools, we have given parents the opportunity to remove their children from the failing public school system and hopefully have them advance to a place where they can really use their talents.
You know, the president always likes to say that he's a results-oriented president. but he didn't cite any achievements. We've increased funding more, but we have not increased funding enough. Okay, we need good teachers we need more good teachers in the school system. And the best way to do that is to fully fund No Child Left Behind. Right now, it's missing around 30% of the funding that it needs. They cannot get the incentives to bring in good teachers. Senator Ted Kennedy wrote the No Child Left Behind Act. I firmly agree with it, and I voted for it. But the president is not funding it. He needs to fully fund No Child Left Behind so that we can improve our test scores and let our children make the grade.
Senator Kerry, we're going to start with you. Once and for all, could both of you tell the audience what your plans are for Social Security?
In 1997, the Congress fixed Social Security. But what the president did is now he's running up this huge deficit, and we can't afford to fully fund Social Security. We cannot, so all we need to do is fully fund Social Security. That is all we need to do. The president talks about privatizing and whatnot. No, we don't need to do that. Congress fixed Social Security in 1997. We were faced with these same threats. All we need to do now is fully fund Social Security.
When Senator Kerry talks about privatizing Social Security as my agenda, is completely false. I do not believe in privatizing Social Security, and as a result, there will be no changes in benefits for those who have already retired or are near retirement age. What I plan to do is give you, the people, more choice. That's what I'm about. I'm for creating an ownership society. And to do that with Social Security, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to invest part of your Social Security taxes to invest them. To build a nest egg that you can then pass on to your family, giving you control, not some government bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., but give you the control of what you want to do with the money.
All right. President Bush, what, if any, revisions would you make with the current income tax system?
The only revisions that I'd make with the income tax system is to make the tax cuts permanent. Congress hasn't made them permanent yet. The tax cuts that we passed in 2000 helped the economy boom. Home ownership is at a record level. Minority home ownership is at a record level. Productivity is at 20-year highs. And yet, you hear all this naysaying. We created 1.7 million new jobs in the past year. The economy is hitting its stride and isn't hitting its stride. It is bounding, it's going up by leaps and bounds. So if you make the tax cuts permanent, the economy will continue to grow. If you raise taxes, like Senator Kerry has proposed, to pay for all of his plans, what's going to happen is the economy is going to tank, and we're going to be in even more trouble than we were 5 years ago.
You call this an economy that it's at its stride? 4 million Americans have lost their health care. 3 million Americans have fallen into poverty. 1.6 million people have lost their jobs, Mr. President. This is not an economy that's on its stride. Now, concerning the income tax, I will roll back the tax cut to the top 2% of Americans. I believe that we should invest that into our middle class. Our middle class is the backbone of our economy. They're the consumers. If we invest money into the middle class and take away from this top 2% that is making millions, then our economy will be able to recover. Bill Clinton did this. The president's father did this. He raised taxes. And now we're talking about all of this. It's not going to work. I'm going to raise 98% of Americans will get a tax cut under my administration. 98% of Americans.
Senator Kerry, we're going to start with you. How will each of you reduce the federal deficit, which is now over $2 trillion?
I would reduce the federal deficit by installing the pay-as-you-go plan, reinstalling it. In 1998, President Bill Clinton, coined the pay-as-you-go. If Congress had a program, they could find out a way to pay for it. When President Clinton took office, he inherited a huge deficit. people said, you can't cut the deficit. You can't cut the deficit. They're saying the same thing now. Bill Clinton installed a pay-as-you-go plan. I will do so. If Congress has a program, a tax cut, a policy that they want to install, I will find it and we make sure that we can pay for that program before we pass it.
What Senator Kerry neglected to say about President Clinton's pay-as-you-go plan is where the money came from. 100% of President Clinton's budget cuts came from the intelligence and defense budgets, leaving us wide open for the September 11th terrorist attack. What I would do is lower discretionary spending on domestic issues, and we've started to do that. Discretionary spending is going down, and if you realize it's going to continue to go down. And with the more tax dollars fueling the economy, lower taxes mean more revenue for the government. Because the more money you have, the more money you spend, and the more money the government can take. And the lower the taxes are, the higher, the less the deficit will be.
We'd like to ask the audience to please hold your applause until the end of the debate. Thank you. Okay, President Bush, let's hear your side on this first. What is your plan to win the war on terrorism?
To win the war on terrorism, we need to stay on the offensive abroad. We've made great progress in the war on terrorism. 75% of Al-Qaeda's top leadership has been killed or captured. 10 million people in Afghanistan have been freed, and a despotic regime is no longer haunting the Middle East. The Afghani people just exercised their right to vote. The first time that they've done that in their history. The people of Iraq are no longer under Saddam Hussein's despotic regime, and a state sponsor of terror has been removed. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi shook, pretty much afraid of what the United States was going to do. After seeing what we did in Iraq, he dismantled his nuclear weapons programs. Again, these terrorist networks and the nations that sponsor them are cutting back. We need to win the war on terrorism to keep up the pressure and not relent. And if you vote for me, I promise you this, I will not relent in the fight on terrorism.
I have one word for you, Mr. President. Osama bin Laden. You took your eye off. Wow. 1 minute. You took your eye off the ball. We're fighting a war in Iraq now, and we have all these new terrorist cells created. Meanwhile, the old terrorist cells are reconstructed. 75% of Al-Qaeda leadership has been captured. That's fuzzy math. You just made up those statistics. I don't know where that's coming from. They're coming back. The Taliban is resurging. We see our NATO commanders on the ground saying that we only have governments outside of power. Okay, that doesn't seem like progress. What we need to do is we need to go in, hunt down Osama bin Laden, a pivotal leader in Al-Qaeda, and destroy him.
All right, Senator Kerry, do you see North Korea as a threat? And if they are, how would you deal with them?
Yes, North Korea is one of the most pressing threats that is endangering our national security within. What I would do is go back to the 1998 fight. In 1998, we had cameras in the nuclear reactors. We had weapons inspectors. We had an open, modulated dialogue with the North Korean government. Now the North Koreans have 4 to 6 nuclear bombs. No, we cannot have that. There was a breakdown in relationships. The administration ignored North Korea. They insist on on multi-party talks. Those aren't effective. We know it's effective. Bilateral talks worked in 1998, and I will make them work again if I am elected.
Those bilateral talks in 1998 yielded those 4 to 7 nuclear weapons. We view North Korea as a problem, and in conjunction with South Korea, Japan, Russia, China, and the North Koreans, we're engaging in talks to have the North Koreans remove their missile programs and nuclear weapons. But if that doesn't work, we're also prepared. We have deployed Aegis-class guided missile destroyers off the coast of North Korea as an early warning system against nuclear weapons launch. Should the missile cruisers detect a weapons launch, we would forward that information to U.S. missiles based in Alaska and California, which would then shoot down the incoming missiles and prevent a nuclear holocaust in our nation. Senator Kerry, since being in Congress, has voted against systems like these to prevent nuclear weapons from ever hitting our soil 53 times. That's not caring about the nuclear threat from North Korea.
All right, we're going to end the first part of the debate here by hearing your side first, President Bush. Could you explain your exit strategy for Iraq?
Our exit strategy for Iraq is this. We will continue to pacify the Iraqi provinces such as Fallujah, which we are doing right now thanks to the help of the British, and to allow free elections to take place. We are training Iraqi soldiers, 100,000 of them have been trained, to take over their duties as guardians of their nation. We're not occupiers, we're liberators. We're not here to set a permanent U.S. presence in Iraq. What we're here to do is to make the transition from the occupation of Iraq, the rebuilding of it, to Iraq's own self-rule. And until that's done, we won't pull out. Once the job is done and once Iraq has control of its destiny, then we'll leave Iraq.
Mr. President, that's not an exit strategy. That's more of the same. We've been doing this for a year now. We've been training Iraqi troops for a year now. And by my count, I believe 1,100 of our brave men and women have died. When is this going to stop? I have a plan to exit Iraq. What we would do was we open up the contracts in Iraq. Right now, we have this silly system that says if any country was not in the coalition, they're not allowed to get contracts. We need to open that up. We can bring the Chinese, the Indians, Bangladesh, we can bring Turkey into this coalition if we allow them to have oil contracts. That's what we need to do. We need to internationalize the process. There's no reason why American troops should be absorbing 90% of the country. Frankly, there's just no reason.
Thank you very much, Senator Kerry, President Bush. We're going to now move on to the second part of the debate. During this period, I'm going to ask a question directed to one candidate. That candidate will have no more than 1 minute to respond, and then their opponent will have up to 1 minute to comment on the answer given by their opponent. We're going to start with you, Senator Kerry. You have earned a reputation of flip-flopping when it comes to voting on important issues such as the Iraq War. This can be seen as being overly influenced or not understanding the issue well enough to make an informed vote. What is to convince us that if elected president, you will not be a flip-flopping leader?
Flip-flopping is a term coined by the president in his spin-up. I'm not flip-flop, okay? I'm going to tell you up front, I'm a flexible person, okay? I'm a flexible person, okay? But I have core principles, and they can be summed up in one word: security. Job security, healthcare security, national security. Those are my core principles. That's what I believe in.
All right. Senator Kerry talks about being flexible. I want you to hear this from his 1996 debate against the governor of Massachusetts. He said he attacked his opponent for supporting the death penalty for terrorists, saying that it's a get-out-of-jail-free card for them. He later went on to say, you can change your mind on things, but not on life and death issues. I guess somebody forgot to tell Senator Kerry that, since now he supports the death penalty for terrorists. There's a difference between being flexible and changing your position at every time. Senator Kerry voted for the Iraq War and now attacks it. He voted for the Patriot Act, and he said it has to do with things that were quite necessary in the wake of September 11th. But now he attacks it. You do not find principled, determined leadership from Senator Kerry, and you do for me. I don't do focus groups when I decide what to do. I do what I think is right, and I go with it and I stick with it no matter what.
Once again, that's distortion. I voted to give the president authorization to use any means necessary to handle the problem in Iraq. That didn't mean I voted to go to war. That didn't mean anything. Once again, distortion. I support the Patriot Act firmly. I say that some portions of the Patriot Act should be expired. The president likes to clump them up in things. The president talks about my tax record. Okay, 84% of the time I have voted to lower taxes. The president talks about how I have banked the budget and things like that. 84% of the time I have supported a balanced budget. Where's the president's record on that?
You know, Senator Kerry said any means necessary. Last time I checked, any means necessary means authorization for us to go to war with Iraq. We tried diplomacy. We had 12 years of UN sanctions that didn't work. Saddam Hussein was still there after 12 years of UN sanctions. And what we needed to do, we needed to remove Saddam before he became a threat, and that's what we did. Senator Kerry didn't vote for the first Gulf War with UN approval, but now he voted for the second without UN approval. You know, he talks about an international test. UN approval is pretty much the international test. So if he doesn't see fit to go to war with UN approval, you'll never see any action taken by John Kerry.
All right, President Bush, this next question is for you. On May 1st, 2003, you proclaimed that the mission was accomplished in Iraq. It is now almost 18 months after you made this statement, and we have seen over 1,100 Americans die in Iraq since then. And it appears that there is no timetable to pull our troops out of Iraq. So I ask you now, Mr. President, when is the mission going to really be accomplished, and when will our troops be able to come home?
The mission will be accomplished when the Iraqi people have the control over their destiny. Now, I want to talk to you about the mission accomplished banner. That was to talk about the troops of the Abraham Lincoln, or the sailors in the Abraham Lincoln, who supported the Iraq War and the Operation Enduring Freedom with great courage and great sacrifice. That's what it was talking about. I did that on the advice of General Tommy Franks to boost morale in the soldiers, because from what they were hearing from the mainstream media, you'd think that we were losing the war. I came out there to boost the morale of the soldiers, and that's what I did.
Once again, this is slip. We don't need that type of leadership. The American people didn't hear it that way. The president said us mission accomplished. Talked about how our mission was accomplished. He said that our mission was accomplished. These are his words, okay, ladies and gentlemen. Now he's backing off of that. I believe he has a word for that, or two words, flip-flop. I believe that's how he would describe it.
You know, Senator Kerry talks about leadership. In his 20 years in the Senate, he's had 11 bills passed into law. 11! You know what his most recent bill was? Giving Jackie Robinson the Congressional Gold Medal. He's had 2 laws stating World Population Awareness Week. Nothing of consequence has come from Senator Kerry. The only thing that's come of consequence is the most liberal voting record in the Senate, and that's wrong for America.
The average senator with my tenure has passed around 11 bills. Okay, I've been leader of the Small Business Committee. I proposed 50 pieces of legislation, all blocked by this administration. Okay, he talks about leadership. You can't do anything when you have this administration that seeks to obstruct our plans to invest in the middle class. You can't do anything.
All right, Senator Kerry, this question is for you. Many of our senior citizens and soon-to-be senior citizens have become concerned about the funding for Social Security. If you are elected president, how will you ensure that Social Security will be available for them?
I will continue to repeat this. The best way to protect Social Security is to fully fund it. The president has his plan for privatizing things. You know, there's no way to pay for this. There is no way to pay for that. If the government was to cover the cost for that, it would be $1.6 trillion. And he talks about how he's fiscally responsible. What I'm going to do is fully fund Social Security. The president, in his 2000 debate, third debate with Al Gore, he said, I'm not going to open the lockbox. Well, he has. He has opened the lockbox. He's running a huge deficit, and he's put Social Security in crisis.
For the retirees and near retirees, there will be no change in benefits. What my proposition is giving the people the option, they don't need to take it, the option of taking some of their Social Security taxes and investing it. That's all it is. It's an option. They don't need to take it. Social Security is safe and it will remain safe under my administration.
President Bush, you have said that you would like to privatize Social Security. Knowing that Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, would you please explain how this is practical and will not increase the debt even more?
Again, I'm not for completely privatizing Social Security. I am for giving people the option of using a small portion of their Social Security taxes to invest. They're not going to do it all. It's just a small portion. Social Security is safe. And yes, it's pay as you go. Social Security has been strained by the baby boom generation. We know that. But you know what? If Senator Kerry's plan basically is to say Social Security is part of his economic policy is to raise taxes. Raising taxes is going to send the economy spiraling downward. And frankly, an economic boom, like one that is occurring now, is going to help save Social Security. And higher taxes and lowering economy is not going to save Social Security.
Maybe I need to make this clear, Mr. President. 98% of Americans will have a tax cut under my administration. That is not raising taxes, Mr. President. Now, going on to your plan, I don't know how you're going to pay for this. By any rosy estimate, it is going to cost $1.6 trillion to fund this plan. I don't know how you're going to pay for this. You've not alluded to this. It just sounds like a cop-out, Mr. President. You're going to privatize Social Security. Okay? All I'm going to do is follow the rules, follow the laws that we passed in 1997, and fully fund Social Security.
You know, Senator Kerry, you're talking about 98% of the people are going to have a tax cut. That top 2% pays 50% of our nation's tax bill. By raising that, the top 2% is what drives the America. This is what drives the American economy. And by raising taxes on them, the American economy is going to slow down. Plain and simple.
The top 2% make 50% of this, make 53% of this nation's income. Okay, it's income tax. You pay in your income. If someone makes a certain amount of income in this nation, they need to pay taxes on it. Okay, and I believe in fair taxes, Mr. President. Obviously, you don't. You believe in giving away taxes to the wealthy.
All right, Senator Kerry, there are now over 45 million Americans without any health care. How will you try to bring medical coverage to these people? Can this really be done without raising taxes or by having the government taking control of the health care industry?
Yes, that is an excellent question. What I will do is I will give 27 million Americans the option of choosing a health care plan, the health care plan that I have, that the President has, that every single member of Congress has. Okay, this is about, we have a world-class education, world-class healthcare system. This is the best healthcare system in the world. Okay, and what we're doing is we're disenfranchising 45 million people from healthcare. If we offer them a plan, they won't have to pay for it, but it will be at an enormous discount. Okay, a plan that I have, which is probably the best in this nation. Okay, the plan that the president has. Then we give them a chance to make sure their children are healthy and make sure they are healthy, make sure their loved ones are healthy.
To help alleviate the burden of health care, I've created a new tax-free health savings account, which gives you choice, gives you control of your health care. Also, a major part of my health plan is tort reform, which is lowering the liability for medical malpractice insurance, which almost everyone agrees is the reason why the health care costs are skyrocketing. Take OB-GYNs, for example. Very important. They're liable for 18 years. 18 years. It's nuts. Tort reform under my administration would take the form of reducing the amount of frivolous lawsuits that are brought against the doctors, and also limiting the amount of payments that lawyers can get for their settlements and for their court victories. You won't see that under the Kerry administration. Because you see, look down, John Edwards. You know what he made his money as? A malpractice lawyer. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see tort reform in a Carrie Edwards administration, because that's how John Edwards makes his money.
Now I have a straight, I don't know where you're getting that from, Mr. President. John Edwards sued insurance companies. Let me just go into one of his cases. A little girl was sitting on a drain, and this drain, for some reason, the water went through this drain, and her intestines were pulled out from this drain. Okay. Now, under the Bush administration, that would be considered a frivolous lawsuit. Okay, that's a frivolous lawsuit under the Bush administration. That's not frivolous in my book. Okay, that's how John Edwards, he protected people. Okay, that's what John Edwards did.
I have a quote from John Edwards when he said, "Who says frivolous lawsuits don't pay for anything? Tell my new house in Georgetown that." That's all I have to say.
President Bush, you and your party were the ones that in 1994 voted the contract with America. One of the cornerstones of this plan was that our country needed a balanced budget and had to reduce our national debt. You inherited a budget surplus of over $400 billion when you became president. During your presidency, that surplus has turned into a deficit of over $400 billion. I would like to know, Mr. President, if you think the growing national debt is an issue of major concern and what steps you are going to take to reduce that debt.
Well, that budget surplus was created on the backs of the intelligence and defense agencies. And so when I came into office, I created a budget deficit by actually funding the intelligence and defense services. You know, the September 11th attacks, it showed to us that we needed to spend more money to improve our intelligence services and our defense forces. You know, the Department of Homeland Security, its budget has gone up about 100% this past year. The Department of Homeland Security is now better able to protect the American people. We're lowering discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is going down. And, it is a concern. But for me, protecting the American people from a terrorist attack is the most important concern. And if I had to choose between protecting the American people and creating a budget surplus, there's really no choice. It's my job. I swore an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States and its people, and I plan to do that.
The pay-as-you-go plan was effective, very effective. The president is talking about bills that did not pass. His criteria says if the Republican Congress presented a bill and the Clinton administration vetoed that bill, which increased military spending, then that is considered a cut in military spending. Military spending increased by 3% under the Clinton administration. It was not cut. I don't know where the president is getting this from. It was not cut. The pay-as-you-go plans are a very effective way for balancing the budget. They do not compromise our national security. President Clinton understood that they do not compromise our national security. What they do is they require Congress to pay for any program. Military programs are not the only programs you need to pay for. We have faith-based initiatives that we're running deficits on. We need to find ways to pay for programs like that.
All right, Senator Kerry, your record of service while serving as a member of our military in Vietnam has become an issue during the campaign. To set the record straight, which version of your military service is accurate? The one you have given or the one from the Swift Boat Veterans for Justice?
I believe the one that is accurate is the one that I and my crew members have given. Okay? I decided to serve my country. Instead of going to Yale Law School like Dick Cheney, instead of going to college, I decided to serve my country. Okay? I believe that should be respected. This Swift Boat Veterans for Truth, or whatever they are called, is doing nothing of the sort. They're spreading lies about my record. Okay, plain and simple. They're spreading lies about my record. I want to serve my country. Okay,
I just want to say, Senator Kerry did go to college. He was in Skull and Bones right before me. I knew him then. But on his record, I'm not going to attack him. He served our nation honorably, and I respect him for that.
President service during the Vietnam era has been an issue during the campaign as well. Your service in the National Guard has been questioned by some. Would you please set the record straight?
I served my commitment in the National Guard. Unlike CBS and Dan Rather would like you to think, I actually did serve. I received an honorable discharge. You know, you have to rack up points in the National Guard. You need 50 points per year. The first year I racked up 530 points. Second year it was 400 points. I surpassed the minimum requirements every time during that time period. You know, this is just something because they can't find anything else to throw at me. So they're trying to dig up old past wars. You can't live in the past when you're fighting terrorism. You have to live in the present. And that's what I do.
Mr. President, record in the National Guard, it may be questionable. I don't know. I don't believe it's an issue in this campaign. He's got a record for 4 years that is questionable, that there are many problems. Okay, now he had his questionable service. I think that's just a common pattern in this stuff. That's what I think that's a common pattern. Just things to get around the system.
All right, enough for taking the high road. Senator Kerry, you threw your medals over the gates of the Capitol building in protest of the Vietnam War. Or was it you threw your ribbons out? You can't decide what you're going to do. Try to be nice here. But Senator Kerry, you are a disgrace to the Vietnam veterans. You said that there were regular cases of atrocity and American soldiers regularly rape and cut off the heads of American people in a testifying to Senate. You know what? That's wrong. That's not honoring our veterans.
You have a word for that, Mr. President. Flip-flop. Just minutes ago, I stood up for my country, like Dick Cheney did not stand up for his country. I stood up for my country. I have a right to say a word wrong. I did not criticize veterans. I cited 150 cases. 150 cases in which I had proof. In which I had proof that these veterans had committed atrocities. Let's put both veterans for truth. They may have some issues with me. But you know what? They have a political agenda to ruin my candidacy, and I will simply ignore them.
You have stated many times during this campaign that creating more jobs for Americans is a matter of high priority. Also, you have stated that during President Bush's term, there are now about 1 million less Americans working than there were before you came to office. The question I would like to know is how you plan on creating more jobs for Americans.
Excellent question. I have a comprehensive strategy to get America back to work. I will raise the minimum wage from $5 to $7. I will end the subsidization of American workers, subsidizing companies to bring their jobs out of this country. Okay. I will give a tax credit to companies that put jobs in this country. I will roll back the top 2% of the income tax bracket and invest it in the middle class. Okay, this will create jobs. Okay, this will put America back to work. President Clinton did this in 1993 and he created 22 million jobs. We have a record. This works. Okay, we know it works. Why don't we just do it again?
Senator Kerry talks big, but there's no actionable solution to that. We just simplified the business tax code, making it easier for businesses to get more money instead of all this confusing mumbo jumbo that the tax codes are now. Making it easier for businesses to get more money and buy the American worker and to employ the American worker. Consumers drive the economy. The more money in a consumer's pocket, the higher the consumer spending will go, and the more businesses will be able to hire jobs because of their huge profits and because they're able to expend them. The boom of the 1990s is because of lower regulations in the 80s that helped fund our research and development. It was a tech boom in the 1990s that fueled it. And in the 1980s, President Reagan cut taxes on the technology sector. which caused the great increases in research and development that were able to present to have the boom in the 1990s.
President, I don't know if your father would agree with you on that. In 1991, he decided that we were running a huge deficit, that interest rates would increase dramatically so that no one could buy a house or a car or anything that they would want. So he decided that we needed to raise taxes on the top 2%. Okay, he was punished by his party for doing that, taken out. President Clinton did the same thing. The top, and we created 22 million jobs. Okay? We have a record here, Mr. President. We created 22 million jobs. Okay, that's what we did. Okay, we know how to get America back.
Well, there's a different situation now. Interest rates are low. Home ownership is at record levels. You don't need to raise the taxes, you need to keep them low. We keep the taxes low, the American economy is going to flourish. And you know, you raise the taxes, who knows what's going to happen? It's going to go down. That's what's going to happen.
President Bush, when you were presenting your case for going to war with Iraq, you said that they possessed weapons of mass destruction. Our troops in Iraq had found no weapons of mass destruction, and coupled with the report from our own government stating that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction, you still think the war with Iraq is justified?
Yes, I did. Let me talk to you about the intelligence that I was given. The DCI, George Tenet, told us that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The British intelligence services told us that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The Jordanians, the Saudis, the Russians, and even the French told us that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Senator Kerry saw the same intelligence that I did, and Senator Kerry voted to authorize the use of force in the Iraq War. But then Senator Kerry, facing a challenge from Howard Dean, decides not to fund our troops in Iraq. He doesn't vote for an $87 billion package that helps provide body armor and armor for the troops in Iraq. You know, it's justified. There was a humanitarian crisis going on. Saddam Hussein was stealing the money from the Oil for Food program and using it to line his own pockets. You saw the palaces that were there when they were conquered. The majority of them were built by Oil for Food money. You know, he was a corrupt regime, and he had the capability to start producing weapons of mass destruction at any time. Tommy Franks called it like a guy with a disassembled gun there. All he needs to do is like 5 seconds to put the gun together, and you got a real problem on your hands. We stopped the problem before you put that gun together.
I remember in the run-up to the war, there were 2 words the president used to justify war in Iraq. Imminent threat. We found out when we overran Iraq in 2 weeks, that Iraq was not an imminent threat. Okay, we found that out. The intelligence that the Senate was presented by the director of the CIA director, and it was, in my words, hype. Okay, I believe it was hype. Okay, we said 1.3 million tons of nerve gas. We can't find 1 ton. Okay, we can't find any of these weapons that are allegedly in Iraq. Okay, I was presented with the intelligence, and I would make no other decision. I saw a grave threat, and it was in that intelligence. The administration decided, we'll just hide the intelligence so the senators will agree with it. Okay, that's what they decided to do.
I don't follow your logic, Senator Kerry. You saw a grave threat, but thought the intelligence was higher. But you still voted for it, you know? So you're saying if you see a grave threat, you shouldn't do anything about it? That's what I'm getting. Because you see a grave threat, and now you're attacking the Iraq wars. Wrong war, wrong place, wrong time. You know? It's not the message you send to the troops. You know? What you need to do is have strong leadership and stick by your decisions. You don't do that at all. I voted for the $87 billion before I voted against it. Come on.
Mr. President, you stick by your decisions, and I stick by what's right. Okay, you want to stick by your wrong decisions, that's fine. Okay, but I'm going to stick by what's right. I was presented with intelligence which was far more hype than what you got. Okay, we know what you have. Okay, we received that. It is the statistics are done down significantly. Okay, we took huge estimates from the Iraqi National Congress, an organization bent on removing Saddam Hussein. They had credibility, but we still I will not raise taxes for the bottom 98% of Americans that are struggling currently to pay their bills, to pay for college, to pay for health care, to pay for other durable goods. But the top 2%, which is receiving huge breaks, has never benefited our economy. I believe in fair taxes, okay? I believe in fair taxes. Top 2% make 53% of our income in this nation. They only pay, 49% of the taxes, 50% the income taxes. It's called income tax for a reason, okay? You pay your income fairly to the government. We have a burden now on the bottom 98% of Americans. They are paying more than they make in their income, more than their share.
You know, Senator Kerry, he always talks about, how he's a champion of the middle class. But in 1998, he voted against eliminating the marriage penalty. It cost taxpayers $46 billion over 10 years. Now, I don't know, is it just me, or do only the rich people get married? No, everybody gets married. Senator Kerry voted to tax that. My tax plan is working. On a family of four with an income of $40,000 a year, they're going to save $900 on their tax bill. Overall, 94 million Americans have a lower tax bill. That's what's creating the economic drive, an across-the-board tax cut. Not just for the upper 2%, but across the board. You know, Senator Kerry, he talks about the upper 2% like there's something wrong with that. You know, the upper 2% are the people that drive the economy. They're the people who make the jobs, and they're the ones who are going to keep the economy growing if we keep the tax cuts low, if we keep the taxes low.
Maybe I should repeat this, Mr. President. I believe in fair taxes. Fair taxes, okay? If you make 53% of the income in this nation, you should be paying 53% of the taxes. That's fair, okay? It is called income tax for a reason. You decide if you want to reward your people and whatnot, I mean, you can do that. That's your decision. I believe that that's morally wrong. I believe that that's why the American people need to vote you out. And need to put me, a champion of the middle class, ahead.
Senator Kerry, you talk and talk and talk, but you can't run from your record. What you say and your record say two completely different things. You vote that marriage tax penalty, come on. That is a middle class tax cut that you voted in. You kept the marriage penalty, and it cost the American taxpayers $46 billion. That's not a champion of the middle class. That's a tax and spend liberal.
President Bush, you are the only president who did not raise taxes when the country was at war. In fact, you even cut taxes while our country has been at war. As defense spending grows and the national debt increases, you have proposed making your tax cuts permanent. Is this a wise decision?
I think it is. In the 1980s, when President Reagan slashed the taxes by a huge percent, government revenue actually increased. If you lower the taxes, the government revenue will go up. It's important to fight the war on terror, and it's important to fight the war in Iraq. But that's not our only front. We have to deal with it's a multi-front war, and keeping our economy strong is part of that. Lower taxes mean a stronger economy. That's the simplicity of it. You lower taxes, the economy goes up. You raise taxes, the economy goes down. It's that simple.
I remember back in the 80s when President Reagan proposed his tax cut. Okay, I worked with it, with Dick Gephardt. I worked on it. That tax cut took off 10 million Americans from the income tax roll. Okay, this tax cut puts more Americans on. Okay, this tax cut is benefiting the wealthy. Reagan's tax cut benefited mostly the poor. Okay, Reagan knew that the poor and the middle class were consumers. Okay, he knew that they were consumers. Okay, the consumers are the backbone of our economy. 75% of our economic productivity comes from consumer spending. Okay, top 2% is not consumer spending. Okay, they're not consumer spending. I have a tax cut aimed at the consumers. Okay, 75% of our economic
Senator Kerry just said a very interesting thing. The poor and middle class are conservative.
I didn't say that. Mr. President, I didn't say that. You said they were consumers.
You said that.
Don't lie up on the stage, Mr. President.
Senator Kerry claims to be a champion of the middle class, but he has 3 vacation homes. One on Cape Cod, he's got a home in Washington, D.C., and he's got a home in the mountains of Colorado. In the 2000 election, 9 out of 10 people who consider themselves wealthy voted for Al Gore. Tell you something, the Republican Party is the party of the workers, not the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is part of the elite, rich Hollywood media types. That's what the Democratic Party is.
Well, you're so much for the party of the workers. Okay, you want to keep the minimum wage down. The workers want the minimum wage up. Okay, you want to erase overtime rules. The workers want overtime rules to continue. They survive on overtime rules. You want to erase it. Okay, I don't know. I have a 10. Probably comes from GOP.org or something like that. I don't know where that's coming from. Okay. The Democratic Party has always stood up for the workers. Always stood up for the workers. And my policy will continue that tradition.
Senator Kerry, your opponent has said that you have voted to increase taxes over 350 times and labels you as being soft on defense. Also, he has called you the most liberal member of the Senate. What can you do to convince the voters that you are not another tax and spend liberal from Massachusetts?
It's easy. The voters can look at my record. 84% of the time, I have voted to lower taxes. This is by the president's criteria. This is by the president's criteria. Okay, weak on defense. I knew when it was time to vote for defense bills. When Ronald Reagan proposed his defense bill to stand up to the Soviets, I voted for that because I knew that it would protect us from the threats of the Soviet Union. Okay, weak on defense while they were creating policy to help America. The president was off getting DUIs. The president was off. When I was in the civil service, the president, I don't know what he was doing, shady, or what he likes to call it, his nomadic period.
Senator Kerry, from your record, you can run, but you can't hide. Senator Kerry talks about supporting Reagan's defense initiatives. He voted against the B-1 bomber, the B-2 bomber, the F-14A, the F-14D, the F-15, the Patriot missile. Against. That's all he does. He votes against. He voted against missile defense, the hallmark of Ronald Reagan's defense initiative, 53 times since he's been in the Senate. Senator Kerry, you don't support Ronald Reagan. President Reagan's probably turning over in his grave, having you pushing yourself up as a proponent of Ronald Reagan. It's a joke. And the American people are going to see that. They're going to see you for what you really are.
What's a joke is your rhetoric. You fail to mention the fact that all of these defense programs were presented. The vice president asked the senators, your vice president dictated, asked the senators to remove these programs because they were inefficient. Your vice president. So what is Reagan's turning over on his grave because he's vice president now? Is that what's happening? Okay, Mr. President, I support that. I know when it's time for defense. I know when it's time to be strong in defense. I voted for Reagan's program firmly. I voted for the largest defense spending increase bill in this nation's history.
Senator Kerry, there you go again.
No, Mr. President, there are. I think there are.
Senator Kerry, to quote your wife, you can take your rhetoric about being tough on defense and shove it.
However, due to the shortage of flu vaccine, vaccines, you have suggested that the United States might be able to import surplus vaccines from Canada. Are you not flip-flopping on this issue?
No, I don't believe I am. The flu vaccine is a national crisis. It's a crisis right now that we don't have enough flu vaccine. And if Canada has it, then yes, we should take advantage of it. However, I'm opposed to importing drugs from Canada because the Canadian standards are not as high as the American standards. I want to protect the American people. I don't want the American people having some sort of tainted drugs coming in the system. That would be horrible for everyone involved.
Okay, let me get back to something the president said earlier. There I go again. Yes, I do go off and take off the problems that this nation has. Yes, I do point out all the failures that your administration has made. They are numerous, by the way. Yes, I do. Okay. Mr. President, I do go again. Okay. Now, to the issue of the flu vaccination, I think we could have been far better prepared. We relied on a foreign company to provide half of our flu vaccinations. No, we should not be doing that at all. Okay, we should make sure that American companies are empowered to protect the American people, are empowered to provide enough drugs for the American people. We're in a crisis now. The president should have foresaw this. He should have used his magnificent, whatever he likes to call it, his leadership skills to foresee this. Okay.
Notice how Senator Kerry had a hard time figuring out the word for leadership? When it's Senator Kerry, Senator Kerry talks about relying on other nations. Senator Kerry has repeatedly talked about an international test for use of armed forces. That's relying on other nations. And I think defense policies that's the most important thing that the president does. He sets the defense policies and he keeps America safe. Senator Kerry, he's blasting me for relying on a foreign company to help solve a crisis. But Senator Kerry would rely on foreign nations to solve the American security. It's just wrong.
Okay, the foreign companies caused the crisis, Mr. President. We're relying on them for half of our goods. We should not be relying on them. Okay, now I propose internationalizing, bringing in other nations. Yes, other nations who provide us with flu vaccination. If we know that those companies are credible, we obviously know that this company is not credible. Okay, yes, other nations should be allowed to participate. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are able to defend ourselves. Okay.
Senator Kerry, you have stated that terrorism will never be eliminated, but can be reduced to be more like a nuisance, similar to prostitution or gambling. How can this make Americans feel that they would be safe if you are elected president?
The president caused a war on terror, caused capturing Osama bin Laden up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay. I made those comments. Yes. I included the fact that I believe that prostitution is no longer a threat. I want to eliminate the threat. I made that clear. I would like to eliminate the threat of terrorism. I think the president and I both agree on that. But I believe catching Osama bin Laden, okay, which the president has forgotten about him, securing the money sources for the terrorists, those bringing in other nations for intelligence, okay, those are most pivotal ways to protect our nations. The president isn't taking any of those actions.
It's just kind of amazing what Senator Kerry's talking about. Reducing prostitution to that level, and it's never going to happen. Senator Kerry views the war on terrorism as a police action. There was another president who viewed the war on terrorism as a police action. That was President Bill Clinton. Doing that, President Clinton cut our intelligence budget, cut our defense budget, and left us wide open for the attacks on September 11th. September 11th shows us that it's not a police action, it's a military action. The United States military has to go out there and get Osama bin Laden. And that's what we're doing. Osama bin Laden is holed up in the mountains in between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We've got our people out there. We got the 10th Mountain Division out there in Afghanistan securing that border. We're looking. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But you know what? Eventually, we're going to find him. And he'll be held at bay.
You don't know where he is, Mr. President. You have no idea where he's from. All you know, he could be in the city of Chicago. Okay, because he could be anywhere. Okay, you took your eye off the ball. Okay, now you talk about this blame Clinton. Everything is Clinton's fault. Okay, the September 11th Commission talks about how your administration didn't take these steps on the day of September 11th. Condoleezza Rice gave a foreign policy speech that said, guess what? What's the most important thing to our national security? Russia. Russia. That's what his administration stance is. Sounds like to me playing the same game.
Well, if I don't know where Osama bin Laden is, I share something with the American people. They don't know where you stand on these issues. You used to be a firm supporter of the Iraq War. You said, you said you thought it would be irresponsible for any senator to vote against funding for our troops in harm's way. And what did you do? You voted against a bill to fund our troops. Senator Kerry, that's not the type of leadership that we need in the war on terrorism. We need strong, steady leadership to make sure that Osama bin Laden is tracked down and caught.
President Bush, you define Iraq, Iran, and North Korea as part of an axis of evil. Critics have claimed that you have ignored the growing nuclear programs in Iran and North Korea. Is this a valid point?
No, it's not. North Korea were engaged in talks to help have the North Koreans disarm themselves, and we set up an early warning system in case the North Koreans decide to attack us. With Iran, the United Nations is working along with us, along with the British, to have Tehran remove their nuclear weapons as a peaceful solution. And you know what? Tehran says that they're using their nuclear facilities for peaceful intentions. If that's the case, then Iran would have no problem allowing weapons inspectors in and allowing us to monitor the nuclear facilities, like we did in North Korea until President Clinton let them off the hook. We need to keep Iran and North Korea on a short leash. We got that with North Korea, and we got that with Iran. We're taking two different approaches to that, but they're both working.
President Clinton didn't let North Korea off the hook. Okay, they have 4 to 6 nuclear bombs now that they did not have when you took office. It happened under your watch, Mr. President. If you're such this great leader, why couldn't you solve the problem? Why couldn't you lead North Korea into negotiations? Both the Chinese and the Russian foreign ministers have both openly said they support bilateral talks. President, we still need to keep them in. He's out of step. He's out of step. Okay? We know that the bilateral talks can work. Okay? We know that. I do not know why the president is so reluctant to accept that.
You know how long it took the United States to create a nuclear bomb? It took 4 or 5 years. Now, it hadn't been 4 or 5 years since I've taken office. They started making the bombs under Clinton when Clinton allowed them to remove the inspectors. I'm not going to let that happen. I won't slip up. Senator Kerry, who knows?
You did slip up, Mr. President. Slip up. What are you talking about? They have nuclear bombs now. We had cameras, we had inspectors. We knew. Okay, the chief weapons inspector on the ground now today said there was no plutonium in there. Okay, they converted their plutonium fuel. I remember this. This happened under your administration. You just sat by, did nothing. They converted the plutonium rods into waste so that they can create new bombs.
Senator Kerry, after 9/11, a large number of nations voiced their commitment to work together to make the world a safer place to live. Many would say our country has shattered this commitment after invading Iraq. How would you repair our damaged relations with our allies?
It's very simple. My plan for an exit strategy in Iraq highlights it. If we bring in other nations to the contracting bidding, then they will have an interest in Iraq. Okay? Then they will be inclined to send troops to Iraq. If a country has a reason to be in Iraq, then they will send troops in. The president went before the UN and lectured them about how they should just go into Iraq for no reason. Okay? There was no reason. He said, you can't have a contract, but you should send in troops. That's not the message we need to send. Okay? We need to have an open process so that we can allow the world to internationalize. I believe that would heal the wounds that were created by the run-up to the Iraq War.
while a bit strained after the Iraq War, they're still strong. NATO is involved in Afghanistan, the peacekeeping in Kabul. And you know, this talk of unilateralism, tell that to the British, tell that to the Australians, the Poles, the New Zealanders. You know, we have had a coalition of the world. We have had more people in Iraq, more countries in Iraq this year, during this Gulf War, than they had in the first Gulf War. That tells you something. You know, to improve our relations, what we need to do, to improve our relations, what we basically need to do is to let the world know, you know, we're not going to stand by and say, you know, we're not, if we have matters of security that are important to us, we're not going to sit by and let other people decide, you know. And once we show the world that, they'll either like it or they won't.
President Bush, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda killed 3,000 people on American soil. However, you have 18 times more as you do in Afghanistan. Do you feel that Saddam Hussein posed a bigger threat than Osama bin Laden? Also, do you consider it a priority to either capture or kill Osama bin Laden?
Well, I do not think that Iraq is more of a priority than Afghanistan. You know, they're both people. You know, troop numbers, they don't tell you everything. You know, there are different types of troops. Afghanistan was basically run by the Afghanis with the support of U.S. air power and some special forces advisors. The American involvement in Iraq, on the other hand, was with our military on the ground doing the fighting. And about your question about Osama bin Laden, is it important to capture kills? Yes, it's very important. But it's not the end-all, be-all of the war on terrorism. The war on terrorism will succeed if we create a situation where nations will not support terrorists and rogue nations are held accountable to their actions. We're not going to reduce terrorism to a nuisance like prostitution and gambling. We're going to eliminate terrorism. And if you do that, and if you like me, that's what's going to happen.
Okay, let's go back to, I have always said that I want to eliminate the threat of terrorism. Okay, I have said that. I want terrorism to be no longer a threat. I said that at the interview that you just quoted. Now, I believe that the president said, we know the president doesn't believe Osama bin Laden is playing there. She's flip-flopping in there. She said that Osama bin Laden is dead. I'm not too worried about it. I don't really care about it. I believe it's worth it. Okay? Mr. President, you said that 2 months ago. Are you changing your position in the debate for King or something now?
Can I try? Again, Osama bin Laden is a big priority to me, but it's not the end-all be-all. That's what I was saying. You know, Osama bin Laden, I'm not going to go to bed at night thinking, oh my God, is Osama bin Laden still out there? You can't do that. You have to focus on the bigger picture. And I believe the world is now safer thanks to the actions that we took in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the results of that occurred in Libya.
Okay, either you're covering a position or you're flip-flopping. Okay. Mr. President, you said these are your words. I do not care about Osama bin Laden. These are your words. That doesn't seem like you care about him or you think he's a priority. Yes, we need to make sure that we get the bigger picture. We need to make sure that we capture and kill terrorist hideouts in Indonesia. Okay. We need to destroy the terrorists everywhere they are. Okay. But Osama bin Laden is still a priority for this nation. At least it would be under my administration. I don't really know about the president administration.
We're now going to end the debate with the closing statements. The coin toss determined that Bush will give his closing statement first, followed by Senator Kerry.
Ladies and gentlemen, these past 4 years have seen many difficulties for the American Republic. We've seen ourselves slip into recession, and we've seen 3,000 of our citizens murdered. But you know what? That didn't stop the American people. We moved on, and we resolved to never let it happen again. We went into Afghanistan and freed 10 million people. Went into Iraq and freed 25 million people. The March of Freedom is moving on. You know, the war on terrorism needs to be fought as a military action and not as a police action. If you want strong leadership is essential to this. 20 years from passing 11 bills, that's not strong leadership. Strong leadership is the ability to take a stand and follow through, whatever may happen. If you want the American people to be more secure economically, then elect me, because I'll keep taxes low, and I'll increase education funding to make sure that the American people get off better. And if you want Americans to be safe from terrorist attacks, we passed the Patriot Act, and we removed 2 state sponsors of terrorism in Afghanistan and Iraq. A safer, stronger America in a more peaceful world and a more secure world is what you want, then vote for me, George W. Bush.
We have heard 2 different voices. One voice is out of touch and out of step with the direction that America should take. The other voice, my voice, rings clear and true. It's a message that resounds across the country. It is time for a new journey. It is time to halt the exodus of jobs. It is time to put strength back into our economy. Americans want to know that they have a health care plan that is affordable and accessible. Americans want to know that they can depend on Social Security and they do not have to live their golden years in poverty. What's most important to the people of the United States, they want to end this notion that we can be safer, yet still not yet be safe. So I say to you today, America, that our best days are ahead of us, that our nation is on the brink of renewed greatness. So America, on November 2nd, join me in a grand chorus of reform so that we can fulfill the opportunity that our forefathers envisioned. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.